the situation in Afghanistan. Let's listen in.
32 C-17s, 5 C-130s departed from Kabul with approximately 12,700 personnel. On top of that, 57 coalition and partner aircraft left Kabul aircraft with 8,900 personnel. This tremendous display of teamwork and focus resulted in a passenger count of 21,600 individuals leaving Afghanistan in just 24 hours. To date, 63,900 American citizens, NATO and other partners personnel, Afghan SIV applicants, and vulnerable Afghans are out of harm's way, now safer and on their journey to a better life. And the majority of these people, approximately 5,000 or 58,700 of them, have left just since August 14th. I want to reiterate that we're able to achieve this level of increased departures because of U.S. military personnel and our partners' work around the clock to conduct this highly important mission, including airport security and flight operation. To that end, we're seeing increased pace in the flight schedule at Kabul. As of yesterday, in that last 24-hour period, one aircraft left on or about every 45 minutes. As we look beyond Kabul, and in order to maintain a steady flow out of Afghanistan, we rely on the intermediate staging bases and safe havens in both CENTCOM and the EUCOM AORs. We've been focused on building capacity while also rapidly processing and facilitating onward movement. It has been challenging to keep up with the flow, but we have made progress in caring for and safeguarding these vulnerable individuals and getting them moving onward. We are committed to doing more and to continue to expand and improve our facilities, from adding shelter to additional sanitation, hand washing stations, refrigerator trucks, providing cold water and the appropriate food, and we're working with our partners to increase this capacity as soon as possible. In the EUCOM AOR, Afghans transitioning through Ramstein Air Base, Germany, have started departing to onward destinations. So far, 5 aircraft and more than 800 travelers who have been screened and cleared for entry departed for the United States. EUCOM has received nearly 8,000 evacuees since August 20th and is considering other installations in Germany, Italy, and Spain in preparation to receive more flights to allow greater throughput to the United States. As I mentioned yesterday, the number of temporary safe haven locations across Europe and the Middle East now stands at 14. This allows us to expedite movement out of Kabul and gives us flexibility from these intermediate staging bases. We are appreciative of the support in this global effort from our allies and partners. We remain focused on the mission of bringing as many people home as we can and as quickly as we can. An update on NORTHCOM operations. In the past 24 hours, 4 flights landed at Dulles International Airport with more than 1,000 passengers. Again, these passengers and their families will go to one of the 4 military installations designated as processing locations. All of this progress stems from the teamwork and professionalism, and especially of our interagency partners here in the States. We know more hard work remains, that our personnel in Afghanistan remain vigilant, and we share the sense of urgency in this effort. We'll continue to keep you updated on Afghanistan through the week. Lastly, as we look at Haiti, the Department of Defense continues support of USAID relief efforts in Haiti. Over the last 24 hours, Joint Task Force Haiti conducted 56 missions, assisted in the saving of 40 lives, and delivered more than 35,000 pounds of good supplies and medical supplies to the people affected by the 7.2 magnitude earthquake in Haiti. 4 United States Marine Corps MV-22 Ospreys arrived to provide additional options for personnel and supply movement. These air assets are in addition to the 18 U.S. military and Coast Guard aircraft already supporting humanitarian relief operations. U.S. maritime vessels continue support also. That concludes my update.
Thank you, John. Okay, before we get to questions, I just have a slight update on the baby count. As the general let you know, yesterday, 3 babies total. Just to clarify, 1 was born on the C-17. That's the one I think you guys know about. The other 2 were born shortly after arrival at Ramstein in the Landstuhl hospital there on base. So 2 were born at the in the hospital shortly after arrival. I am told that moms and dads and babies are all fine and healthy, and all is looking good there. And if we can get more information on this, I'll be able to provide it a little bit later. Lita.
John, a couple questions. I know that you are not going to be able to answer whether or not the deadline is going to be extended beyond the 31st, but can you give us some perspective from the military? Can you get all Americans out in the next several days by the 31st? Do you need more military bases in the United States to house them? Do you need more throughput in order to get that done? And do you need to increase the pace? And one, go ahead.
No, go ahead, keep going.
No, and the other day, the general told us that there were about 2,500, I think, Americans that had gotten out, but that number has increased over the last several days. About how many have gotten out so far?
About how many?
Americans.
Okay. Okay, so all the deadline. I'm going to miss some of these, Lita. So just walk me back. You're right. There's been no change to the timeline of the mission, which is to have this completed by the end of the month. We continue to make progress every day in getting Americans, as well as SIV applicants and vulnerable Afghans out. And you heard the numbers that the general briefed just a minute ago, and the vast majority of these individuals are Afghans. So we remain committed to getting any and all Americans that want to leave, to get them out. And we still believe, certainly now that we have been able to increase the capacity and the flow, we believe that we have that that we have the capability, the ability to get that done by the end of the month. You asked for, I think, bases here in the United States was another one of your questions.
Will you need to increase the number?
It's possible that we might be looking at additional U.S. military installations here in the United States. Right now, we're working with 4 of them: Fort Lee, Fort McCoy, Fort Bliss, and Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst in New Jersey. Those are the 4 that are operating now and are beginning to see a flow of SIV applicants. It is very well possible that we could need to use additional U.S. military installations here stateside. And as we make those decisions and as we're able to announce them, we certainly will. But we want to make sure that, just like we wanted to make sure in Kabul that airlift wasn't a limiting factor, we want to make sure that when we get these individuals to the United States, that temporary, safe, secure, and accessible temporary lodging is not the limiting factor to their ability to get on with their new lives and to finish the process. I'm sure you had like 3 other ones that I forgot.
No, the Americans, the general at one point told us that 2,500 had gotten out. What is your assessment now as to the number that that have gotten out of Afghanistan, and do you think you can get all of them out?
I think I answered the second part of that. I think for all Americans who want to leave, the State Department is working very hard to contact them, and we are getting them out every day. And that's not going to change. I understand the question about the specific detail. I would just tell you that several thousand Americans have been safely evacuated from Afghanistan. I understand that's not the degree of specificity that you want, but that is as far as I'm going to be able to go today, several thousand. And to include, several hundred just yesterday were able to get onto the airport for follow-on transportation. So it's every day we are moving Americans out of the country. Tara.
Barring any other factors besides like weather, do you anticipate that DoD will be able to keep this pace up another 20,000 in the next couple of days to, maybe have 100,000 evacuated before the end of the week?
That's definitely the plan, Tara. But as you know, the throughput is a function of many different factors, including even weather. So our plan is to continue this pace as aggressively as we can. You heard General Lyons speak to that, I think, very specifically yesterday. That's the goal. That's the intention.
One fun one for you. The babies that were born on the aircraft and on if it's a U.S. side of a military base, are they considered American citizens? We've gotten that question a lot.
That's a good question. I do not know the answer to that. I'm probably going to have to punt to my colleagues at the State Department or Immigration. I don't know the answer to that. And just to remind, it was one born on the aircraft, actually in flight, two born at Landstuhl shortly after the flight arrived into Ramstein. And if I can get you any more details, I certainly will.
One last, in the expansion effort, there's a Fed BizOps opportunity now for seeking Farsi and Pashto speakers for Keesler Air Force Base. Is Keesler going to be one of the expansion sites?
I don't have any announcements on future possible installations that might be of use. We will do this in a rolling fashion, Tara, as if and when we decide we need additional installations, we'll let you guys know as soon as we possibly can. Yeah. Jen?
John, has the U.S. started preparations to leave in order to leave by August 31st? When does the U.S. military have to begin making those preps? When does that decision have to be made?
So I'm not going to get into a specific TikTok here. Just as when we were talking about the retrograde out of Afghanistan writ large for the military, we were very careful about the details we provided. The threat environment is very real around the airport, so I am going to be equally as judicious about the kind of information that we give out. But roughly speaking, you need at least several days to get the amount of forces and equipment that we have at the airport to get that safely and effectively retrograded. I won't get into a specific TikTok. And this is going to be the pace and whatever the daily extraction is going to be. That's going to be up to the commanders on the ground to determine what they're going to move and how and when they're going to do it, because we have a concomitant mission all the way through to continue these evacuations. So you have to be able to do both, and it's a balance. And the Secretary is going to trust the judgment of our commanders on the ground to properly meet that balance.
But it sounds like you're still working on an August 31st deadline.
We're absolutely still aiming towards the end of the month.
And are the public statements by the Taliban the same as the private statements being made to U.S. officials about the deadline and when U.S. should leave?
What I can tell you is that the Taliban have been very clear about what their expectations are as well.
But the public and private statements are the same.
Without getting into details, I'm not seeing much dissonance.
And can you give any more details about the firefight that took place today, a second firefight outside the airport, and that there were some arrests by the Taliban of some so-called ISIS people taking videos of the airport?
I know. I don't have those details. We're working with CENTCOM right now, as that is currently ongoing. So I know that CENTCOM is continuing to do that, and there is no security, if you would, breach or any problems there at security of the airfield.
Is the U.S. providing any intel to the Taliban about an ISIS threat?
I know the commanders on the ground continue to communicate to ensure that the safety of not only around the gates but the other checkpoints, so that we can continue to process vulnerable Afghans, other coalition folks, and American citizens in.
Okay. You go over here, Dave.
So when this evacuation began, there were already close to 1,000 U.S. troops at that airport. So just to be clear, when we're talking about pulling U.S. troops out, we're talking about pulling all the troops, so you go to zero at the embassy. Is that correct?
That's correct. No, I followed the question. That's correct.
So you have to take out more than you put in.
Yes. Yes.
So how does that happen without the active cooperation of the Taliban to keep the crowds away as U.S. troops first thin out their perimeter and then pull back? How
I'm going to
does it
let the
happen?
general take that for in just a second because I think he's much more informed than I am about this. But I would just make the larger issue that any retrograde out of or drawdown, if you will, out of an environment that you can't assume is always going to be permissive is one that has to be done very carefully, and it has to be sequenced in a very methodical way so that the safety and security of our people and the people we're trying to protect is considered of paramount importance. And so we aren't gonna, and I'll level set with you now, we're not gonna be able to tell you, once we start to affect this withdrawal, whenever, and like I said, we're still planning on the end of the month. Whenever we start it, we're not going to be able to provide a tick-tock every day of exactly what we're moving out and at what pace so that we can limit vulnerabilities in the information space and in the actual physical space of the airport as we move out. But it's all done in a very careful, methodical way so that you can preserve as much capability to the very end as you need, as well as security. And not just the security for our folks, but the security for the people that we're trying to safely evacuate. But I'll turn it over to the general in case he has more detail.
I think, Mr. Kirby, you covered that very well. I just would add to that is, security is paramount during any, phase of an operation. So as you look at, as we go forward here, the commanders are going to continually communicate, coordinate to ensure that security is set to allow all those flight operations, all those things to continue to the end.
Does the methodical, orderly withdrawal that he just referred to, does that require the assistance of the Taliban?
I mean, it requires the coordination that I think we're doing right now to maintain that security.
Yeah, there's no question that, David, as we work through this, that the daily communication with the Taliban commanders is going to have to continue. That's just a hard fact.
Does their promise of cooperation expire on August 31st?
I'm not going to speculate about or even speak for them or for their intentions. That we are, again, the mission has been to end on the 31st. That is the assumption that we are working towards. And
last 24-hour period, one aircraft left on or about every 45 minutes. As we look beyond Kabul, and in order to maintain a steady flow out of Afghanistan, we rely on the intermediate staging bases and safe havens in both